Ahoy! As you can see from the stuff in this clip being worth more than 2000 winter tokens, I enjoyed last year's winter event a lot. And this year the rewards are much better. In fact, they're so good that I would recommend every player to farm at least some tokens. I'll actually start this off by showing you the rewards and then talk about the most efficient ways to farm for them, just so you understand why it's worth so much. On this map from New World Database, you can see the locations of the 4 winter villages on the world map where you can trade in everything in order to buy the rewards. And this is the shop where you can see the different rewards. On tier 1 we still have these more basic foods that give you attribute bonus stats, but not quite as much as full attribute food. But then on tier 2, if you have some reputation, you have the instrument skins now. The other furniture rewards are the same as last year. And on tier 3, you can also see we have furniture rewards again, and we also have a bunch of blue weapons, which are all 400 gear score and come with chain ice, with the exception of the shields, but generally not really that important for any high level player. There used to be swords and shields with too many attribute points, but those have been fixed. On the Joybringer tier we have a bunch of the furniture rewards from last year, as well as an emote and a skin from last year. Along with that, we have a variety of blue crafting patterns for weapons and armor. And those are very interesting, we'll get back to them in a second. On the Holiday Regent tier we have a ton of new items. We have new furniture items, we have a bunch of new armor skins, we have new emotes and a new tent skin. Farming all of those is going to take quite a long time because all of them require 10 to 15 premium winter tokens. But then this tier also has legendary patterns that work differently from previous event legendary patterns. Both the legendary and the blue tier are interesting for different reasons, but they also share one unique thing. In this event, with these patterns, you can choose which attribute is going to be the attribute of the crafted item every single time without using any resources for it. This obviously cuts down on the expense of crafting. You don't need timeless shards, iron battle medals, or whatever else you can think of. Now let's have a closer look at the legendary patterns first and then return to the blue patterns. When it comes to the legendary weapons, they all have 3 locked perks. You can choose the attribute, but almost all of them will come with Chain Ice, Vicious and Jagged. Some exceptions here are the Void Gauntlet, which comes with Chain Void, the Fire Staff, which comes with Chain Fire, and the Life Staff that comes with Blessed, Vicious and Keenly Jagged. Very interesting combination. But the shields are also not really worth talking about, so mainly these are really weapons where you either want this Chain Vicious Jagged combination or you don't care about them. I think these are solid baseline weapons. Especially having Chain and Keenly Jagged is an extremely high amount of extra damage, only attunement would realistically be higher, but the problem is that often other perks are more valuable than Vicious. But these weapons pale next to the legendary armor. Again, you can choose any attribute on the armor, and all of the armor that you can craft, light, medium and heavy, comes with the same perks. These perks are Corrupted Ward, Elemental Aversion and Luck. Now you may be seeing this perk combination and think that it's not particularly good, especially if you don't value luck, which is completely understandable, I'm in the same boat. But you're looking at this the wrong way. Corrupted Ward and Elemental Aversion share an exclusive label, Damage Absorb. You cannot craft these perks together under normal circumstances. If you pay close attention to the gear that you have, you may be saying, wait, but I've seen a ton of Ward gear and Elemental Aversion together from other drops. And that is correct, from drops. There are a lot of items that have combinations of Ward and Aversion, but those usually drop from expeditions and often from mutations. And that means that they're locked to a particular attribute. When we're looking at Corrupted Ward and Elemental Aversion specifically, there are a couple world drops that have those perks but don't have a particularly important third perk along with that. And other than that, those come from the Tempest caches that you get from the quest. All of those come with Corrupted Ward, Elemental Aversion and Refreshing Evasion. A heavy set with Strength, a medium set with Dexterity and a light set with Int and Focus. You need to complete Tempest quite a few times to get them, and you have to be aware that they can actually be upgraded to 600 because they don't really indicate that. So if you unfortunately already scrapped them, well, you were kinda out of luck until now. But the most important thing about this is that these item combinations don't really cover all options. If you want to run a light, strength or dex set, which is what most DPS want to do nowadays, then this isn't really covered by the item choices that you get here. If you want to run a medium strength or int set or maybe a heavy con set, those options aren't covered either. And this is exactly where the new armor sets come in. Now, why do I care so much about having Elemental Aversion plus Ward when that doesn't really increase my DPS, for example? In PvE, assuming you don't need a skill perk for your weapon, Refreshing is generally considered the best secondary perk along with Ward. But here's the thing, a lot of weapons don't really benefit that much from Refreshing because they already have so much inherent cooldown reduction. For example, the Greatsword, the Throwing Hatchet, a hatchet build that already has Refreshing Torrent, and quite a few others. For many of those builds, taking reduced damage so they can freely DPS is actually a lot more valuable. And in that regard, Elemental Aversion can even help you save money. Most of the elemental damage that you take in PvE is ranged, excluding the mutation effects where 50% of the damage is split into elemental damage. Having some pieces of Elemental Aversion allows you to essentially delegate your jewelry as the dedicated parts for specific elemental resistances. And credit to XR here who originally came up with this. With Elemental Aversion, you can run your entire armor with onyxes, and then only have, for example, a fire amulet with a fire gem, a ring with a fire gem, and an earring with a fire gem. This is especially convenient for bosses who usually still deal most of their damage as physical. So while this may not be for everyone, I personally rate having Elemental Aversion over having a little bit of extra cooldown reduction. So I already farmed a light dex set, and I will also farm a light strength set, as well as some medium strength pieces. Even if you're not using the full set, you have some very cheap pieces to swap out that way, for example if you have a better weapon perk on another piece or something. Also, along with that, since these pieces are 600 gear score locked, you will get some bonus umbral shards for crafting it, or if you're not 600 gear score yet, you'll have them at 600 gear score anyways because you crafted them yourself, and they will also increase your expertise. But then there are also the blue weapon schematics. You're no longer able to get any of the luck weapons from last year, and instead we have these now. They're interesting because much like in the Night Veil event, they have different perk pools. So this here, for example, is the normal perk pool of an Orichalcum Greatsword. You can see you have Vicious and Keen, then you have all the ability perks, then you have all the Bane perks, and then everything else. The Winter version is very different. You don't have any Keen at all, and Vicious has an extremely high chance. If you're not rolling Vicious, there's a very high chance you will roll Enchanted, and the other perks here that have a very high chance are Plagued Crits or Keenly Empowered, both procs. And then the next high chance perks are Shirking Frost and Chain Ice. Only after that we see the actual ability perks. But what you have to keep in mind is that we can still exclude Vicious by forcing a damage con perk onto this. So for example, if you're forcing Thwarting Strikes, then there is a pretty good chance that you will get Plagued Crits or Keenly Empowered along with that. And if you end up rolling 600 gear score, there's a pretty good chance it would be Shirking Frost or Chain Ice, or one of the ability perks. With Keen and Bane both not in the perk pool, there are some interesting options for crafting here. If you want to get Vicious, you can also force Attunement to avoid getting Chain or Shirking. Especially for Fire Staffs, this would seem like an appealing option. And if you're rolling Round Shields, you can lock an ability perk and you have a pretty good chance to roll that in combination with Vicious and Keenly Empowered. And in that case, you don't even need to aim for 600 gear score to get 3 perks. At this point, a quick reminder, if you're enjoying the video so far, please consider subscribing and clicking the bell. So now that you know about the gear, let's talk about how to get it the most efficient way. The first method is farming Christmas Tree, which you'll find in every city that can be owned by a faction. These give you some Gypsum Orbs along with presents. The tier 1 present is the hastily wrapped present and will only give you 1 winter token, as well as 3 lockboxes per day, which gives you some extra gold and has a chance to give you a blue pattern as well. The tier 2 present is the beautifully wrapped present, which has 3 winter tokens instead, and has a chance to drop premium winter tokens, and can also drop the legendary crafting patterns. The highest tier is the exquisitely wrapped present, which has 5 winter tokens inside of it, as well as a chance to drop a premium winter token, and again can drop the legendary patterns as well as the blue patterns. To get the higher tier presents, the tree needs to be upgraded the same way as everything else in towns gets upgraded, so some town bot missions need to be done for that. The trees can normally be looted once per day, but when they get upgraded, they actually reset and can be looted again. Since the presents can drop random patterns, I would recommend not buying more patterns than you absolutely need right now yet, because you may just get the pattern that you otherwise would have bought from the present anyways. While this method is efficient and easy, it can only be done once per day. Last year, along with that, you could collect Gleamite whenever you would see a Gleamite shower somewhere in the wild, and you could collect Lost Presents. When there are no other players around, these may be your only options, but generally I find them relatively slow and inconsistent because they somewhat rely on luck and being in the right place at the right time. A third method, which can only be done once but gives you a bunch of patterns, is the quest line. Even if you did the quest last year, you'll have a new quest line where you need to do some very basic tasks to check things out, and then go to Everfall and harvest a single Gleamite unless you find a Gleamite shower somewhere, and then you have to defeat the new boss once, and all of this will give you some extra rewards. So I recommend doing it, though it doesn't really matter when you actually do the quest. If you defeated the boss beforehand, it's gonna be fine. And speaking of the boss, the Winter Warrior will spawn in various locations across the world now, much like other world event bosses do. In order to defeat him, you need to activate pillars near him with 4 people, and then you can actually fight the boss. And he is pretty beefy, so this is why I would recommend doing this now. At the moment he's getting heavily zerged, and once that slows down, the farm will slow down too. Interestingly enough, you only need to deal very little damage to him to actually get the reward, so don't worry about being in a group with other players, don't worry about losing the tag because you res other players, you can absolutely do that. If you do just a little bit of damage to the boss and you are in combat, it seems like you will get the tag. Here's a very interesting drop table with a 10% chance to drop 1 Warrior Hailspike, a 70% chance to drop 2, a 10% chance to drop 3, and a 10% chance to drop 5. 1 Warrior Hailspike is worth 10 Winter tokens. So killing the boss once is usually 4/5 of a Premium Winter token. Considering you have a low chance to even get 2 Premium Winter tokens worth of Hailspikes, this is absolutely worth doing as a farm. But even with this farm, I can tell you it will take you quite a lot of time if you want to get all of the rewards. I spent around 3-ish hours farming him by now, and I'm not even a quarter of the way done to all the things I want to have. So this is definitely something that will keep me busy throughout December, but will also keep me busy are some other things that have changed that I want to talk about. If you're interested in hearing about changes to multiple very important farms, as well as seeing a Starstone guide, then please consider subscribing and clicking the bell, because those are things that I will be tackling in the next days. Thanks for watching, Sloth, out.